Good morning. Good evening. Can we mute the Zoom? Okay, I think we're good. All right, good morning. Morgan, can you assist? A little bit of technical difficulties. I think that might be good. Good morning. This is the Committee on Public Safety. Today is Wednesday, March 4th, 2026, 10 o'clock a.m. We are in conference room 411. This is the last day of our final mandatory 5-day recess. My name is Della Albolati. I'm the chair of the Committee on Public Safety, and I represent Urban Honolulu, District 26, the communities of Makiki, Tantalus, Papakolea, and Punchbowl. I'd like to have my committee member introduce himself. Go ahead.
Hello everyone, thanks for being here. Representative Garner Shimizu, District 32, which is roughly from 4th Chapter, Moanalua, Red Hill, Halawa Valley, Halawa Heights, Lower Aiea, Pearl Ridge, Aloha Stadium, Foster Village, West Aliamanu.
Plenty of communities. I wanted to share that we have committee members who are both in their districts, so they may be zooming in and watching online, and we do have an audience. The reason that committees like ours do informational briefings is to provide the community with important information to do a deeper dive sometimes on issues that we cannot do in a regular hearing. This particular issue for the Committee on Public Safety is very important because as we have seen, the increasing need for communities facing changing climate situations, harsher extreme weather conditions, and situations where we see communities needing to respond to emergency. So last year, one of the conversations we had were around how do we build a more resilient community, whether it's building structures, whether it's HIEMA investing in community readiness centers. And then what we learned through the hearings on the Committee on Public Safety was what are communities doing? And so this briefing is really to understand how communities kind of outside of government, with government assistance, but oftentimes without government assistance, are building resilient communities that can respond to crises. We have seen community resiliency hubs pop up, particularly during the pandemic when we saw lots of food hubs serving our communities when people were really afraid. We saw AARP step up and do all kinds of things for all kinds of communities. And most recently in disaster zones where we saw in Puna or on the Big Island when volcanoes went active, or on Maui when there were the wildfires. Communities stood up before government could come in. And so what we really wanted to focus on is what are communities doing now? And we have a great lineup of speakers today, all from community. On the island of Hawai'i, we have communities that have been leading, I want to say for almost decades, but I'm not sure. And so for me, this is as much a learning opportunity as I hope it's going to be a learning opportunity for my committee and the community, because what we want to take away from this informational briefing at the end of this are resources about how communities can become more resilient on their own. But we also want to start talking about the policy framework in which we can plug in already existing community hubs, resilient centers, into a greater, broader statewide network, so that we can all be ready when a huge disaster hits. So with that all said, that's an ambitious program, but I know we can do it because I know, based upon the communities that I've seen and worked with across the state, that we can do this. I apologize for a little bit of the long-winded introduction, but I really wanted to set the stage for what we're doing here today for the next hour and a half. First up, we have Ms. Janice Ikeda, CEO of Vibrant Hawaii. Ms. Ikeda, take it away.
Mahalo nui, Representative Baladi. Aloha kākou. So Vibrant Hawaii has been formally operating on Hawaii Island since 2020. We've channeled over $10 million directly to our community partners. The infographic that I'm sharing kind of outlays our domains of which we operate. So directly, we provide training and mentorship through an ambassador program with youth and young adults. We operate a resilience training center. And then the middle domain is the ways that we support community as an intermediary, as a training partner, as a facilitator, so that communities are able to activate and do things that build resilience. And examples of that is the resilience hubs, Kaukau for Keiki, Iliahiku, and our social service navigators. And then what we do at Vibrant Hawaii, we take all of those practices, we take all of those case studies and examples, and we share those models with others and other communities across the state and across the nation, so they are able to do this as well. All of that 10 million that was referenced was channeled through that middle circle of the ways that we support community so they can. And so examples of that were grants, contracts, supplies, equipment. I'm often asked, what's resilience? And sometimes that's immediately followed by, everybody has their own definition of a resilience hub. So what do you mean? So, at a basic level, resilience is a capacity to withstand or recover quickly from difficulties. And a hub is a central node or focus or focal point where activity is conducted. And so therefore, resilience hub is a central place in a community where people come together to build capacity to withstand challenges and recover quickly from disruptions. On Hawai'i Island, we coordinate a network of over 20 hubs, and here's how they lay out across the island. They are in every district of the island. And last year, we were invited to support, similarly, a network of hubs in Ko'olau. And this is how they fall across the region. We provide our hubs with solar generators, with Starlink, two-way radio communications, storage space, emergency shelter supplies, ongoing certification and training, monthly tabletop exercises, and an annual training conference. One example of the kind of drill that we coordinate is conducted every summer, and it's utilizing the Kaukau for Keiki program. We call this our annual drill. It happens during hurricane season. It includes, as you can see, over 30 partners from across the island. Some of the things that we are drilling for 6 consecutive weeks every summer is site management, resource and inventory management, traffic and crowd management, communication and coordination, and demobilization and reporting. It's a USDA program, so you can just imagine the level of reporting and data collection that's required by this. Last summer, this network community served 6,000 kids and channeled nearly almost $260,000 to our local farms. Now, the importance of this scheduled annual drill came to life shortly thereafter during the government shutdown. And so we were able to quickly mobilize that same network to stand up within 2 weeks period, a 3-week program that ultimately served 74,000 people. And this was done completely funded by community, driven and executed by community. There was no government dollars involved in this, and it was upwards of $750. And so communities are not only demonstrating their capabilities through these drills and building those capabilities, but are then able to quickly mobilize. Hubs, in addition to providing that immediate response, are also investing in hazard mitigation. So mitigation is the proactive action taken to reduce the long-term risks and impacts of hazards, whether natural or human caused, before they disrupt a community. And this is a quote that was just shared with me at last week's NACO conference in DC. For every dollar invested in mitigation, $6 is saved in damage and response. And for every dollar not invested, $33 is lost in economic activity for that community. And this becomes very important now, where we are at, as we're seeing FEMA suspending, cutting, and canceling pre-disaster hazard mitigation funding. One of the activities that we focus on is chainsaw safety and felling certification. After a year of running these programs, we now have 7 teams 6 on Hawai'i Island and 1 in Ko'olau. 56 folks have become certified. And what that looks like in implementation and mobilization, if you recall, just a few weeks ago, there was tremendous rain and wind event that impacted communities. Following that, we reached out to hubs in the network and heard back from one of them in Kahana. And she said in Kahana, stream maintenance really made a huge difference. They have one of those chainsaw teams. Homes along Kahana Valley Road that usually flood were spared, and our community was proactive about digging trenches as we monitored the storms. And so when we think about the value of trained community groups that are taking the time to do these hazard mitigation activities on an ongoing basis, their impact is really tremendous. So if we take that example and we now apply it to food security and what we know is very important for residents to have that 3-week food supply on hand, and we look at what is being invested in through Hui Hanai Kamoku. Last year, we supported 20 communities to go through 30 plus hours of training in freeze drying preparation for locally sourced food. The goal that we've put out to our network of 20 communities across Hawai'i Island is this summer to be able to produce 10,000 units of freeze-dried, locally prepared food. And we will be distributing it this summer in our Kaukau for Keiki program. Our intent is to then take what we learned from this initial pilot of 10,000 and then scale it further up to reach more families and be adding to their emergency food supply. In addition to these things that I've already mentioned, we also include in our network 16 first aid CPR instructors. After 1 year, these instructors have certified 400 folks in first aid CPR. We have a network of 15 psychological first aid instructors, and within a 3-month period of receiving their certification at the end of last year, they had already certified 120 residents in PFA. We host annual youth resilience academies that are led by young adults. It is inspired by the Teen CERT program and adapted for Hawai'i Island communities. This year, we are on track to reach 250 intermediate and high school students. We are hosting a resilience conference this summer with 6 tracks in medical support, mental health support, shelter support, volunteer and donations management, long-term recovery, and food security. And we've recently taken initial steps to formalize a statewide resilience coalition that includes representatives from Hawai'i Island, Maui, Moloka'i, and Oahu. The work of the Hawai'i Island hubs have been demonstrated continuously each year, not only through training, but through real-world implementation. And I've provided a list of the examples of the ways that communities have trained and then responded to actual disasters and impacts felt on Hawai'i Island, most recently seen through the Kilauea eruption that happened about a month ago, where residents who are living on water catchments were experiencing tephra and Pele's hair being deposited on their roofs and in their water catchment systems. And the way that we learn from these experiences is then we reach out and build partnerships with subject matter experts. And right now we are exploring a partnership with Kika and the Plumbers and Fitters Union to see how we might be able to partner and train residents to then be able to support one another in ensuring that their water catchment systems and their filtration systems are going to keep them healthy and safe in these kinds of impacts. Another example is Vibrant Hawaii mini grants. And so we piloted this last year in September. It was a $100 grant. 150 people applied. They reached 7,000 people in this 1-day activation to make your community vibrant. And I'm sharing this as an example of low cost, high impact opportunities that we might consider scaling across the state. Some examples were folks that said, I know I have several kupuna on my street. I made a little Ziploc bag of some emergency supplies, and the most important thing I put in there was my name and my phone number. And I let them know, when you need help, call me. I'm your neighbor and I'm here. And it was things all the way from that scale of neighbors meeting one another to someone took the initiative to fill potholes in his road. And so we're very proud of what was accomplished through that one day, and we're looking at activating this across the year. I want to close by sharing something that came up in our Resilience Coalition yesterday, and it was that every day families are facing personal disasters. And in under-resourced and rural communities, people are figuring it out with the abundance they have in skill sets, relationships, and reliance on each other. And this is resilience. And finally, this was shared by the leader of our Hui Hana Ikamoku freeze-dry network. And she said, we are not first responders, we are immediate responders. Mahalo.
Thank you, Janice. Now I know why we started off with you. Thank you for framing everything and sharing all the good work that Vibrant Hawaii has been doing for so long and all the communities that you have networked. We're gonna shift a little bit. We're gonna move to what's happening on Oahu. And really as people are tuning in and listening, I think I really want this opportunity to ensure that we understand the scope and the breadth and the diversity of the communities that we're working with. And that, you know, is really appropriate to start with Hawaii Island. But we're gonna now shift to Matthew Glei, Matthew Glei, who is a facilitator with Hawaii Kai Strong, amongst many of his other things. And so I'm gonna let him introduce himself, and he's gonna talk a little bit about some of the CERT training that's going on here on Oahu Island, but all the some of the other things that he's also doing here in Honolulu and throughout Oahu. Matthew, take it away.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your being here and hearing all the wonderful things that's happening with Resilience Hubs. Obviously, Hawaii Island has been doing this for 6 years now. And so a lot of the hubs here on Oahu, some of them are just cranking up, but some have been very, very active for years here. And you'll recognize their names and the people. So I wanted to talk a little bit about disaster preparedness and community resilience. So I'm not going to spend time talking about all the natural disasters that happen. We're all familiar with them: hurricane and flooding, volcanoes, especially tsunamis and earthquakes, landslides and wildfires. We've all been shocked by what happened at Lahaina, and it's a long process coming back. But we've also worked very closely with the emergency management agencies. So, you know, statewide, it's HAIMA. They're here today to listen to what we have to say, and they lead a lot of the statewide planning and coordination. They were very active on Maui and have been active whenever a disaster strikes. But the first responders are really from the county. So each county has its own organization, but they're all very much organized around taking care of people in that county, wherever that is. And so, you know, we work closely with them. As a CERT instructor, I volunteer for the city and county of Honolulu, and so do community training. And I think the community training is important because many of the people who come to our classes are from a specific or nearby community. So it's a great way to start community active there. And I'll show you how we're organized. But many of us have also been through the AARP program, which is Hawaii Hazards Awareness and Resilience Program. And just get rid of this so I can see it. Sorry. I need to go back and share again. Sorry. You're still seeing it, good. Well, I'm glad you can see it. So many of our communities have been through this, not only here on Oahu, but in other places. But it's a good program that started in 2013, And it's an educational program for the broad community because it really does take that broad community to respond. Many of the organizations that I'll be talking about in terms of CERT teams have been through this process here. One of the most important things is our early warning system, and each county has its own emergency alert system. Here in Oahu, it's HNL Alert, which is a very useful tool, big improvement over the previous tools. Being able to do that, speaking through our cell phones, all those kind of things are important. And we find the challenge there is sometimes messaging. Is it specific enough that if you're saying evacuate, you know who they're talking to? And so every time we have one of these real world emergencies, we're learning better how to do this. Even the wildfires in LA were having to improve their messaging as we went along. And we also have a number of visitors here on the island. I forget how many each day somewhere in Hawaii, but it's tens of thousands. And it's very difficult to communicate because they're not aware of the dangers that we are aware of because we live. Also, we have many languages that are spoken. And so translating those and dealing with that kind of messaging is also still a challenge, although I think we're making progress. And then partnerships with the resilience hubs. The reality is not every CERT team can be a resilience hub, but they can stand up around the resilience hubs. So hubs are going to need even more help when there's a big, broad emergency like a hurricane or a tsunami or anything like that. The other thing is just making sure people are prepared. Building a 14-day kit is a minimum ask from HIEMA and every county organization I'm aware of, but that's just the beginning. Getting people to build a go bag, people to build that 14-day kit of food and water, understanding where are they going to go during an evacuation. And then we have CERT Community Emergency Response Team training. And as I said, it's put on by the city and county at the Frank Fozzie building, but we also have a team of people who go out into the communities. I'm the Windward CERT coordinator. And so we work mostly with Kailua, with KK CERT, which is Kaneohe Kahalu, as well as with Hauula, and even Laie in some cases. So, and there's other folks in different parts of the island that are providing this training. So it's really good. It teaches you basic fire safety. Most people have never used a fire extinguisher in their lives, hopefully, but we teach them how to put out a fire. Also light search and rescue, so you could go to your neighbor's house and find them and get them out safely. We also, how the team is organized, what are the different roles, and disaster medical operations. In many cases in a major disaster, the first responders cannot get to you, especially if you live in a one-way in, one-way out community like the entire Windward side for the most part. But even other towns have that problem. So there's a lot of stuff. There are a lot of resources and tools for readiness, but people have to be convinced to do it. So a lot of us do go to emergency preparedness fairs. I know DEM, HIEMA, the police department, the fire department, Miku, and so forth. We go to these emergency preparedness fairs to sort of demonstrate, look, it's easy. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to build a kit. Just take care of 2 people for 14 days. And we talk about all those things. And there's a lot of help on the internet and at the websites of all the emergency management agencies. But Resilience Hubs is great because it's there 5, 6, 7 days a week doing good things for people. And in an emergency, it's a trusted place. People know about it because they've interacted with it. And the goal of my spiel is to say, and CERT teams will absolutely surround and help those hubs when they exist. This is the Oahu Cross-Island Community Resilience Network. These are all people who have gone through the AARP training over the last 10 years. And these are all groups that have CERT teams around. Now, there are a couple of hubs on the windward side that I'm showing here. One is the Key Project in Kahaluu, and the other is in Hauula Emergency Leadership Program. It's with Dotty. And the fact is, they've been hubs for years and years and years, long before COVID, but especially during COVID, they rose up and helped the community. But we also go to those places and teach CERT, and they teach first aid and all the things that Vibrant talked about, Janice talked about, are perfect places for that. So we can build a team of people who are willing to help in gray skies, black skies. And we also communicate, you can see the lines communicating from each group down to the Department of Emergency Management, EOC. That's the blue polygon on the left, and then ultimately to HIEMA. And HIEMA connects all the other counties in a real big emergency. So the reality is this hub and spoke concept is really helpful. And we actually exercise this in drills that we do during Makani Pahili, and for tsunami awareness, for earthquake preparedness, drop cover and hold, great shakeout. So these are networks that actually already exist. And so as new hubs pop up in these other communities, we're absolutely going to be able to support them. We've trained thousands of people on this island through CERT. It's first started here in 1995. So we've been training people every year, and we have a lot more training going on. So, and last, any questions? I guess maybe that's at the end.
Yes, we'll have lots of questions. I want to reassure the public that all of the slide presentations we have, we'll be placing it on our Public Safety Committee website, so it will be available for everyone and they can access those resources. Again, I want to just note CERT, we use acronyms a lot, but CERT is, again, Community Emergency Response Teams, and it's an effort that's supported by the City and County of Honolulu.
Well, in each of the counties and HIEMA for that matter. I mean, it's originally a FEMA program, but ultimately now the leadership is here.
And I also want to acknowledge that we have Dotty, from the Windward Resiliency Hub. We also have representatives from the Be Ready Manoa CERT team that they began setting up, I think, over 10 years ago. 2014. So for our colleagues, we will share this information, and I think that the notion of getting more groups, and it doesn't have to be a whole community, it can even just be smaller communities.
Sure.
An entire condominium that might house hundreds of people could be CERT trained.
Absolutely.
And so this is a resource that's available across the islands in different forms with the different counties. We're going to turn now to Dr. Miku Lementine, who's a coordinator with the KCC CERENE program, which stands for Community Engagement for Resilient Neighborhoods, and it's out of KCC, right?
That's right.
All right. I've interacted with Dr. Miku. Can I just call you Dr. Miku?
Yes, of course.
On a number of occasions in community, and she is really helping, I think, networks across the state from her perch with KCC, and so wanted to hear from her and her thoughts and kind of an overview, oversight from the CERENE project. So go ahead, Dr. Miku.
Thank you so much, Representative Vladi. So she did a great job with the acronym. So yes, we're based out of Kapi'olani Community College, CERENE, Community Engagement for Resilient Neighborhoods. But I'm also the co-coordinator of the Oahu Resilience Hub Learning Community. And I think somewhere online, I'm joined by my colleague, Atalina Passy, with Lahui Foundation. And just for fun in the room here, actually at the back of the room, we have some of our student leaders, next generation youth who are also active with Resilience Hubs joining us today. So thank you for the opportunity to share. And it was actually awesome to have Janice go first. I think we are little by little sharing all the pieces of the things that we've been doing. I just wanted to throw this slide up so you could just have a quick peek at some of the different partnerships and different groups that we have been working with. City Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency. I'll show you our timeline in a moment. So we have been working pretty closely with them. They really helped kickstart things initially, and then especially Vibrant Hawaii. We followed a lot in their footsteps, but we were kind of newest to this initiative or this work, and really happy to be here to trace a little bit about kind of where we came from and where we're going. We did get the kickstart on resilience hubs, working with the City Office of Resiliency with this project called Action 15. And the publication came out August 2023. And that was really, at least for Oahu, just taking a look at what's the need for resilience hubs on Oahu? What's the interest? We did a survey. We worked with the Department of Urban and Regional Planning just to assess where we're at here on Oahu. And there was a great deal of interest. So all of that's documented. You can find that report on the city's website. But then from there, the funding for that ended, but we had built up such a strong network of partners and relationships. Atalina and I wanted to keep meeting and keep doing that work. So as well as expanded into INA spaces and other ways of looking at resilience hubs. So we moved out from there and continued to meet and did kind of a soft launch in 2024, but we didn't actually have direct funding for it. We just kept doing the virtual meetings and all the work that we've been doing. Somewhere along the lines, I'm not sure exactly when, but we kind of had been talking with Janice, and as they were moving here onto Oahu, and they kicked off the Ko'olau network, and we kind of more formalized our partnership and worked with them. So just so you can kind of see how we've all been working together, and also been working with the Cross Island Resilience Network and Matt. So we are all coordinating with each other. But then this last fall, we did officially receive a little bit of funding through an intergovernmental agreement, and that allowed us to expand our capacity and do the work we really wanted to be able to do at the neighborhood scale island-wide, which is a huge undertaking. But this is also how we were able to bring all our staff and student leaders here. And then looking forward, we're getting ready in June, and it's purple and teal because we're doing this with the support and mentorship of Janice for Vibrant Hawaii. The Vibrant team's gonna come in and help us run our very first Oahu Resilience Hub Summit here in June, which is awesome because they've done 5 now, right? So that's kind of where we came from and where we're going. And this is just a little bit of an illustration, at least for here, how the work we're doing with the Resilience Hub community is a little bit different than the Vibrant Network. And I think it's important to show this because it also shows the need. So Vibrant Hawaii, you can see on the right, they're a coordinated network, right? So they're activating all of their hubs together when there's a disruption. They use the same templates and communication protocols. They're all trained together. There's a network level decision happening. They're doing these drills. That's really, really needed. And so that's happening right now. But for the rest of Oahu, we're trying to support that with the hub learning community. And we're working more with individual hubs, helping the hubs connect to each other, helping resource the hubs. But the hubs are the ones that are making their decision about when they activate. And so the hub learning community is basically a community practice. And there is a need still. But not sure yet at what scale and how to launch that. So that's just to show a little bit about the differences between our work and how we're supporting here on Oahu. This is our actual mission. So we're a community practice dedicated to supporting development of resilience hubs here on Oahu and connecting this ecosystem of resilience around them. And that's our mission, to support individual hubs. And we're really focused on coordinating learning and best practices. This is, it's been raised a couple times about what is a hub. So everyone had asked, like, how many hubs are there on Oahu? I was like, well, we can't count until we have a definition. So this is most recently adopted by the hub learning community. So it's a trusted gathering site or group that supports everyday resilience and then during a disruption supports a coordinated response. And right now we have 6 different working groups through the hub learning community that are actively supporting hubs. So we have a neighborhood boards working group. So we're trying to learn how does that integrate with a neighborhood board system. We have our next generation group. So we're talking about how do we bring in youth. We have a new faith-based and hubs working group. They're really looking at churches and faith-based groups. We've already been talking like how does CERT, right? How does CERT work with the hubs? And then we have this new INA spaces because folks that are doing work in the lo'i, right, and the forest, they can mobilize fast. They have all the tools, right? So how does that intersect? And then of course we have all of our new hubs that are coming on board. So those are the different working groups we have right now. And then this is another snapshot of what are hubs, and then also kind of a way of an introduction to some of the ones in our hub learning community. So hubs first and foremost are people. I learned this from Vibrant Hawaii at one of their summits, I think, is if the building burns down, it's the people, right? They're gonna find another place to work. So it's not just these big buildings and facilities. So resilience hubs are people. They're the everyday programs like the Kapuna exercise program at Hauula with Dotty, right? They're supporting senior breakfast or feeding for youth and children. But what if all of those organizations had equipment and supplies, a plan, and the ability to activate? They're already active in their community, right? So it's including the preparedness kits and supplies. In the lower hand corner, you can see our little CERENE hub at KCC. So we actually have our own hui that we're working with within the larger college. And so we do food distribution events in partnership with Waikiki Community Center. So hubs are pop-ups. And we do that, we're popping that up every semester. And that same group now can mobilize and pop up in an emergency. So it's the same kind of skill sets. And then hubs are places or sites, big or small. It could be Muriel Flanders Park, can be a hub. And the hui that's supporting restoration work there. Maybe that hui is a hub. And there's Key Project, Honolulu Museum of Art. These are all in our learning community. And then local ea also, and we're exploring what that looks like. Wanted to put this slide up. We were kind of debating whether or not to include it, but so you kind of saw the blue skies every day, right, for how we support resilience, but then how do they pivot in an emergency or disruption? So I just have the two models here. You can see the response mode for hubs means they have their plans, they're communicating, but they have the ability to support with reliable energy, water, gardens, right, food, places to store those plans. That's what the buildings could look like. But the same thing's happening on a smaller scale, right, for the groups, right? So that's just to show you. And it's also like a wish list of ways that we could be supported. So I included that. In terms of resources and ways to connect, one of the programs that I'm most proud of is our Resilience Core Leadership Award program. So CERENE's been running this continuously since CERENE's gotten our start about 4 years ago. This is the first year we've had 7 cohorts go through. So student leaders receive funding to be placed with community organizations and support resilience and sustainability efforts. They get a FEMA certification. We're going to be doing psychological first aid training with them. And then this is the first time our Resilience Core Leader program can be placed at hubs. So now this program is perfectly set up so that as we have hubs, student leaders can be connected. So we're looking for hubs to host them, and if you have student leaders, you can send them our way and we'll place them. And then this is also another way, resources for community members. Sorry, the font's a little tiny for you guys there in the room. It's basically the hub learning community. We meet every month. It's open to everyone. Anyone who is a hub, who wants to support hubs, who wants to join a hub, form a hub, student leaders, join any of our working groups. Every month you can come and we gather. And then we share tools and best practices. We bring in subject matter experts. We connect hubs to each other so the hubs can share what they're doing. And then the working groups meet. So that's open to everybody to join. And our next gathering is March 19th. And the psychological first aid training is coming up. That's open for folks. I think we have a few slots left, so just putting that out there. And then, as I said, we're gearing up for our first summit in June. So that's us. And we have a brand new website I was encouraged to share. It's still in the works. Like, we're just getting started with all this. But yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to share.
Thank you, Dr. Miku. I wanted to share with the community and my community members that for a representative in urban Honolulu, right? It's so great to see the rural communities connected and that the rural communities are leading the way. What I struggle with as a leader of an urban community is how do you connect people who are in buildings and are so used to actually being siloed. But you speak exactly about how like hubs, which is, again, an amorphous term, but it could mean even just buildings. Mm-hmm. And so when I've seen my building get activated because we're practicing fire drills, or sometimes we have that midnight fire alarm that goes off that's not a fire drill, and we're all running downstairs in our pajamas, and I have people who are looking out and saying, okay, I need to go to the 16th floor to check in on a kapuna, right? That's the beginnings of a resiliency hub. And so I really want to thank you for the resources you're providing, and then again to the community who's watching, we're going to share this so that they know that these monthly meetings they can attend, and are they via Zoom? Mm-hmm. So anyone can attend, and if you don't think that you could be part of a hub, you certainly most can. And so this is the first step towards it. I want to turn next to our final presenter, and then we're going to open up for questions. Our final presenter is Kealiʻi, Lopez, and Craig Gima from AARP Hawai'i. They work, obviously, to focus on kapuna, who we know, and I know, we were very concerned about as we saw some of the missteps or, what happened when the Maui wildfires hit and how we were very not actually aware of how we could get and respond to our kupuna, and that was an immediate outcry that came. And so I know AARP Hawaii has been working hard over the last year, 2 years to really get out in communities. So I wanted them to come and share what they've been doing and how they can be a resource to our community. And some of you may already know that they are a resource, but I want to really share you guys statewide. So go ahead, Kealiʻi.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rep. Bellotti. As she indicated, I'm Kealiʻi Lopez. I'm the state director for AARP Hawaii. And one of the things that Craig shared with me is that most people are prepared right after a disaster, partly because it's after a disaster that they realize what they should have done. So clearly those who are engaged in resiliency hubs, certified communities that have prepared are again the best prepared. But the majority of people out there have not thought about this. And again, it's after a disaster. And part of this is from Craig's experience in covering numerous disasters, from tsunamis in the Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Thailand, Kauai's Kaloko Dam failure, if you folks recall that. Clearly Hurricane Iniki, earthquakes in San Francisco. But the thing to keep in mind is often after a disaster, what we often see is community members coming together. Neighbors checking on each other, people feeding one another, neighbors who are contractors, so Kika's folks, people with heavy equipment. They're taking their gear, their loaders, they're helping clear streams, helping their community members. And that's really what I think I heard before was immediate responders, right? So one of the things that I think is most important for people to think about is government's going to have a lot of its resources being tapped and a lot of demand on it. So the degree to which the community can be prepared for that is always the most important thing. So a major disaster can take government days to get to your community. So your ability to be prepared and again take care of your own ohana, but that of your neighbors is critical. Disaster resilience has been talked about already, is really people getting together. And as you already spoke of, Rep. Bellotti, yes, it can be a condominium. It can also just be a block. It doesn't have to be the entire community, or it can be 4 houses next to one another. The degree to which your family is ready is the resiliency part. So part of the examples that, again, you spoke of, imagine the many lives that can be saved. So communities like Manoa, in your area, Rep. Bellotti, is how people can prepare for disasters. That's why AARP, so you'll see on the screen, AARP worked with FEMA to create a disaster resiliency toolkit. It's a booklet with tips and templates on how to, and helpful information for community leaders. We highly recommend folks who are interested in that, in addition to tapping into the resources from those who spoke before myself, is this guide, again, that AARP worked with FEMA to create. It's available online at aarp.org/disaster resilience, or people can go to aarp.org disaster/preparedness to get more information in general about how to prepare. Next slide, please. Thank you. The reason AARP is involved in disaster resilience and disaster preparation is that kupuna are most likely to die or be seriously injured in natural disasters. We saw this in the Maui wildfires, and decades before that fire was Hurricane Katrina, which was 21 years ago. Related to Hurricane Katrina, people 75 and older accounted for half the deaths, despite being only 6% of the population. During the Maui wildfires, more than 2/3 of the deaths were people 60 and older. This happens in every disaster, but not much attention is given to the need to reduce kupuna deaths in disasters. In the state's final report on the Maui fires, the report pointed out how many kupuna died in the disaster, but there was no information on how we could do more to protect kupuna who are vulnerable to specific, so there were no specific recommendations targeted towards how to reduce kupuna deaths. But we want to thank this committee and the legislature for passing a concurrent resolution last year asking Hauʻi to come up with initiatives to better prepare and prevent kupuna deaths. They've hired staff and hopefully they get a chance. John is here from Hauʻi. We'll be able to share with you folks the work that they've started in that regard. Next slide, please. So after the Lahaina wildfires, we came to the legislature because we saw that there weren't recommendations specific to kupuna. And we wanted to improve ways to address kupuna disaster preparedness. And what some of the lawmakers did was basically say, look, we know that disaster preparedness is important. A lot of that gets done in the counties. And they said, hey, Kealiʻi, can't you folks do something about it? And we took them to heart. So what AARP did was we worked with our national office to get funding, and we hired a contractor, and that group was a St. Bernard project, which came out of the St. Bernard precinct in New Orleans, and they had that experience of having to deal with what happened in Hurricane Katrina. So much of what we did was we took a FEMA or a HUD plan for multi-family units, revised that specifically to address the issue of affordable kupuna housing properties. So we know, at least in those instances, those communities are taking care of kupuna. So they developed, and we have handouts here, but it's a template. So what we wanted to do was kind of what a lot gets done. It's not rocket science, but you have to take the step. So what we did was we created a template for the property managers. We knew that in a disaster, the degree to which property managers are prepared to help their residents address and be ready for a disaster was critical. So we worked with the county emergency management agencies. We worked with the county elderly affairs divisions, and we did webinars across the state. We did them as county specific, so they could deal with and understand what the disasters specific to their area, but also the resources specific to their counties. We did that across the islands, and then we also did statewide ones. You know, one of the questions you asked previously, Rep. Bellotti, was, can this template be used by condominium associations? And my answer is yes. And what we'll do is work with, luckily, the Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation that helped us inform everyone. They're going to be posting and making this available, including the webinars that we did available online. So the key there for us was recognizing that there are some differences in preparing kupuna or people who care for kupuna having to be ready to understand what the different needs are for kupuna. Next slide. And then you'll hear, if you have opportunity, but Dotty's here, Hector's here. One of the things that AARP does is we've provided what AARP calls community challenge grants. Too bad we didn't have this a couple of weeks ago because today's the deadline by 12 noon. So I don't know, you got maybe another hour to submit your application. But it's important because from AARP's perspective, our national office has actually doubled down on the amount of money it's going to make available for community challenge grants. They're anywhere from $1,000 to $25,000, depending on the types of work. And disaster preparedness is absolutely a part of it, which is why Dottie's been great being able to get, whether it's Starlink or other things, walkie-talkies for Be Ready Manoa. Again, it's revising and providing that resource to communities that are already doing the work, right? It's how to make it easy for folks who are already motivated and out there getting things done. I'm gonna quickly just jump to recommendations. You know, one of the things that we see is clearly having more organizations like Janice's and some of the others here are so critical. Community organizations that can quickly respond. Because unlike the government that's trying to take care of the entire state, they can focus on what their community needs are. One of the things that I think is important is that oftentimes making resources available to organizations like Vibrant Hawaii and others, they're able to respond very quickly, and they can be flexible and nimble in a way that sometimes is not as easy for government. One of the things we saw that was very critical, and the counties in particular hopefully can have that flexibility, is during the pandemic when we worked with the Honolulu Executive Elder Affairs Division. They were able to be very nimble in how federal dollars that they had could be utilized to quickly mobilize and provide resources into the community. I believe that nonprofit organizations like Vibrant Hawaii and the others that you hear, because they are independent nonprofit organizations, can often respond very quickly and easily and nimbly, more so than government. Not to say that government's not important, absolutely it is. They're a critical part of that overall continuum. I think the thing to keep in mind is that disaster resilience is a grassroots effort. And supporting communities, the degree to which the legislature can support communities and community leaders in their efforts are critical. They do play an important role. Government is important, but these community organizations can often be there very quickly, as they indicated, immediate responders. So again, in the end, we really do believe organizations like those that you have heard from and are already actively committed in your communities is great. Again, I think people out there who are hearing this, Rep, so thank you for scheduling this, is just to realize you don't have to try to bring everybody together. Start small and go from there. But the main point there is to start. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm gonna ask actually all the presenters to kind of come closer to the front, and then maybe I know that we have Dotty and Hector. I'm gonna exercise my discretion as a chair. Dotty and Hector, did you want to come forward and say a little bit about what you folks are doing in your start hubs? And you can just come to the table. Will the other presenters also stand behind or sit behind them, so if we need to pull you up, we can. And that includes Janice. And then I know that we also have someone from Haima that I want to acknowledge. As we're moving people, I just want to tell the folks this disaster preparedness planning template that Kealiʻi referred to. Again, individuals can email HIAARP@aarp.org to get a copy of this, and you'll be in contact with Kealiʻi. I just want to thank Kealiʻi again. I think this is again valuable resources. I know that we have Miku. Dr. Miku had mentioned that here on Oahu we're looking at how we're using the neighborhood boards, and so in these neighborhoods, I know that Makiki is one of them that's looking at a resiliency hub for our canal area. But Manoa and the windward side, is it Hauula area? You folks have been long doing this, and I feel like it's been an outgrowth of some of the work at the neighborhood boards. So if you can just briefly introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about what you guys are doing, I think that would be great for the community. And before you do that, I want to acknowledge that in Wahiawa, another part of rural Oahu, there's actually a very active CERT/HR program where they've been training through their neighborhood board members, and they have walkie-talkies and everything like that. So again, things are happening all over the communities. Dotty, you first, and then Hector.
Okay, thank you, Chair. As you said, Leo Hauula got started. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. Way back in 2011, when a gentleman from our community walked into our neighborhood board meeting and said, "Dotty, do we have an emergency plan? We just saw what happened at Tokushima. What are we gonna do in Hauula if that happens?" I quickly tapped him on the shoulder before he left the room, and I said, "No, we don't have one, but we need one, and you're gonna help us, aren't you, Bert?" He was a colonel in the military, a retired colonel, and he really stepped up and worked very hard for the next 10 years. Now, we took this really seriously. The more you look, the more you see the issues of vulnerability in Hauula and that whole region with one road in, one road out. And we have a partnership hub now. We have created that since then, and we work with over 20 nonprofits and our own nonprofit. And thank God the city and county of Honolulu have given us access to an old facility they had built as a satellite city hall in Hauula. And that's where we provide all our services. But do you know where that's located? Right on Kim Highway, right next to the ocean. It is not climate resilient in any way. And that's why we began looking around for climate resilient facilities, but we just don't have them. If you look up and down all of Ko'olauloa, 26,000 people there, there's not one facility that's going to accommodate those people. There is a Kahuku Elementary School on a hillside that they've named as a shelter, but as the DEM director said recently, none of those shelters across Oahu have ever been checked to see if they would stand up to any kind of wind resistance. And in a hurricane or a tsunami, we have no place to go. It's the truth. We have put together all kinds of strategies. I just recently wrote a state GIA and proposed that we implement all of those strategies throughout all of Ko'olauloa that we have been working on for over 10 years. We think they're good strategies, they work. We do a health survey with our whole community to find out what the community needs are, where the low-income people are, where the kupuna are, where the people with disabilities are, and we have a database on that community, and we do that every 2 to 3 years. We also have neighborhood block captains. We've been doing that for 10 years. We also have plans for a resilience hub. We worked very hard. The state gave us some funding to do the planning. We're still working with our planners because we recently had to downsize our facility because of lack of federal funding. It isn't realistic. So we are now working with a $4.5 million budget with an earmark from 2024 and starting to break ground this year. But it's been a long trip and it's really difficult with federal funding. We got all kinds of great funding from like Castle Foundation, Hawaii Community Foundation, AARP, and others who have helped us put together enough money for planning and then also for beginning to actually implement to build a facility. It's up on a hillside. DLNR gave us a 65-year lease, so it's out of the flood and tsunami zone. We know our people will be safe that are there, but we've had to downsize it from 1,500 people as a safe room or safe facility to 600 now, 500 to 600. And so we are working really hard on this, but we're also working really hard at the same time to serve our community in every way possible. We have 5 food programs that we provide throughout our community on a regular basis, monthly, daily, weekly food programs all over the place. And we also provide help with human services, social services, education, everything from keiki to kupuna. I also want to mention we had a federally funded project to provide kupuna support navigation. So, and we've been serving Kahuku Ha'ole Hale, which is a low-income kupuna facility in Kahuku. Kahuku Ha'ole Hale, one way into the facility, one way out, a very fire-prone area around it. They're very concerned they're going to have a big exercise March 20th up there to help remove a lot of the combustible materials that are around that facility. But there are 64 seniors that are there. We've been serving them senior food boxes since 2016, and we know them well. But with this project from the federal government, we also learned a lot more about what's going on there. There is no emergency plan, and I implore you to please look into the fact that senior facilities must have emergency plans. It's really a critical issue. And I know you have a lot of things to do today, and I could say so much more, but I'm gonna let my colleagues start talking.
Great, I think that you provided so much information, and thank you again for all the work that you're doing in organizing Hauula for over a decade. Let's go to Hector.
On
3 minutes,
Halloween,
Hector.
on Halloween Day in 2004, the Manoa stream overflew. And the water ended up at the University of Hawaii, causing an $80 million damage. A lot of the Manoa community is senior citizen. On 2014, a whole bunch of people, about 12 of us, got together to see what we could do to be prepared for anything like this in the future. We sought direction from Rep. Isaac Choi, and initially we were called the Manoa Valley Disaster Preparedness Team. But it was his direction that enabled us to become Be Ready Manoa. We became a 501c3 nonprofit group. In 2017, HAIMA recognized the Be Ready Manoa as the first urban disaster preparedness group in Oahu. Well, since then, even before then, in 2014, we started doing fairs to educate our community, and on those we have invited first responders, Red Cross, police, Red Cross, the whole list of them. They supported us. They were there. It was a success. Throughout the whole day, we had over 4,000 people come in and out. We used the Manoa gym to do such. After that, we learned that they were receptive to what we were doing. So we it's when we became a Be Ready Manoa. Then we start having cert classes. We start using the AARP programs. And subsequently, every year, we would have seminars or fairs to educate the community. And we were lucky enough to have ARP provide us with over 200 walkie-talkies. We divided the community in certain sectors, and we allocated to certain sectors the people that came to the programs. In case of an emergency, electricity is going to be out, communications will not be available, and sometimes maybe either the phones will not be working. So the answer was the walkie-talkies. Our leader, Wes Oda, approached ARP, and they were kind enough to provide us with that. And what we do every first of the month, practice. We talk to each other from a distance. Manoa Valley has about, I would say 60% of the population is kupuna. And we are somewhere around 65,000 people in that area. Well, we have every so often hold what we call round robin. We're planning one this coming in May, and where we address the how to prepare for the wildfires, hurricanes, and flooding, how to help our neighbors, provide first aid, when to shelter in place, the survival kit, and the communication. We are members of CERENE. We've been there. We applaud what everybody's doing. Basically, I don't want to talk what they've done. We're doing that. We've been doing it for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you, Hector. Okay, before we open up for questions, I want to just acknowledge that we have John Vieira here, who's the Community Outreach Coordinator Lead for Hawai'i Emergency Management Agency, and he's available to work with all the communities, and this really is kind of a network of both community and government. I want to open up to questions, and then we have 20 minutes of it, or we can also just wrap up, but 20 minutes for questions and any final comments. Rep. Shimizu, any questions?
Where do I start? There's so many questions. I'm just so impressed with all of your efforts. I think you guys should head a department.
Oh, no.
But I guess my comment would be, I would love to see folks, and I'm sure it's already happening from what I'm hearing, is coordinating your efforts and working together so there's as much elimination of duplicity and sharing of funds and resources, because something like this must cost a lot, and I would hope that there's coordination in advertising for each other or getting information that's efficient, because we're all seeing the same thing pretty much. I mean, maybe not the same thing, but similar things, yeah. So I guess my main question would be for private entities, nonprofits here, how can government be better involved in supporting your efforts?
Can I ask if we can allow maybe Janice and Miku to or Matthew to come up to the table and respond to that question?
Can I say one
And then you
thing
can,
quickly?
yes.
I think it would be great if the state would fund a yearly conference of emergency managers across the state, especially small communities, to come in, sharing with one another on a regular basis and getting that kind of support would be very useful. Networking, getting to know us, getting to know you, talking about the needs of communities on an ongoing basis.
So annual conference of emergency response for communities. Okay. And statewide.
Yes.
Okay. Janice, Miku, do you want to respond to this?
I was gonna say Janice should go first.
I'm sorry, I think for the
Oh.
camera, we need to ask them to sit there, if that's okay. And then Hector and Dotty, please move to the sides and so you can be available just to jump back if you need to. And the question is, what can government do to support these efforts?
I think actually I'm really glad Dotty said that. So in observing actually the importance of having an annual summit for Vibrant Hawaii, how important it's been for resilience hubs to create a sense of community also amongst those hubs, continue relationship building. So maybe not just like an emergency conference, that's really important, but also a resilience hub summit. Having dedicated support for that, I think would be very, very important going forward. Having dedicated funding also to support resilience hub network coordinators as it's needed, because all of that relationship building, all of these communications, all the follow-ups with even our staff in the back of the room, they're all like 10 hours a week, right? So you need a lot of people to do, I still say island-wide, neighborhood level island-wide. But then it's also providing opportunities and professional development for next generation as well. So that's some of that, and then support for programs like the Resilience Core Leadership Award program, where we have our young people out there, or the Resilience Academies that Janice has. Yeah, I think, of course, in addition to that, equipment, all of that piece too, but funding the people, right? So we talk a lot about equipment and gear and food, and we need those things, but also funding the people that are supporting all of those relationships is really important too.
Janice?
I would agree with what Dotty and Miku shared. And I think in addition, there's a really promising practice that's emerging with the Resilience Coalition building. And what I see being able to leverage through that kind of network and relationships is it really cuts down on R&D. So if one community has already identified a contractor or a training or something that is really working well, a solution for even a solar generator or battery backup, then every other community doesn't have to go through that process of figuring it out all over again. Just yesterday at the table, our counterpart on Maui was like, we'd love to do freeze-dry training. I want to write a grant. And I was able to just hand over to her the entire supply list with hyperlinks that take you to every place to order every item and be like, here's what you need. And it's that kind of resource sharing and knowledge sharing that's possible when we bring people together in something like a coalition.
Matthew, you wanna add anything?
I agree. This last October, I went to the Hawaii Food Summit in Wahiawa, and that was an amazing 2 days. It's a different group of people, but there's a lot of overlap because they're the ones who really have perfected the freeze drying and all that kind of work, which you guys are doing as well. So I think that is important, but I also think that just things like websites. I mean, some communities have websites and some communities just don't have the capability. Being able to say, look, we've got some bright kids, we want to put them on creating a website. They'll walk you through customizing it. Then each of these communities that I showed on the map and all the other communities could share. I mean, not creating it from dirt day one. Those are simple things that, once again, if you do it in a very modular fashion, it's very simple for almost any organization. We don't have the resources you guys have, as an example, but they have amazing websites, and it's very, very useful to drill down and find out. It's a great way to say, hey, we're real, we're doing this, here's the online stuff that we've already done, to get people prepared. The trouble is, things like just getting a building to do a presentation is difficult. Because if I rent a school, it costs money. Those kind of things. Even district parks have to require, sponsorship. And so making that easier is a very inexpensive thing to do.
Okay.
But
Well, I'm hoping after this presentation and the fact that people can see all the resources that are available, that you guys will be getting phone calls. Mr. Hector, real quick, and then I have a couple
Yes.
questions.
Some of the members here have the federal or state funding. Some of the other nonprofit self-preparedness groups, they ask for money from the community or donations from the businesses around us. We have survived on donations from the community. We don't sell anything, but finding a place to hold the classes, we have equipment that we have in our homes. We have a trailer from Matson where we cannot get a place where to put it. And we tried the city and county, and 4 years ago, they deny us. So we need a space to put a place where we can work from.
So I'm hearing coordination and placement is the key. I want to turn to a question actually for Janice, because it intrigues me that you folks run annual exercises. So clearly Hawaii Island is far, far more advanced. Do those exercises engage with the county emergency management and what would it take for Oahu to do something like that? I don't even know if Oahu could do it all. I think we would have to try and do it like in regions, and like Ko'olaupoku could be the first one to do it. But can you walk us through what some of that means, what the exercises look like?
So at the onset of hurricane season, every year for the past 5 years, we've been holding our summit. For the past 2 years, we've invited hub groups from beyond Hawaii Island to join us. And so the first year, folks from Ko'olau came over. And then last year, we had representatives from every island, Kauai, Oahu, Maui, Hawaii Island, all came together, in addition to partners from Haima, and every county's emergency management team sent a representative over to the summit. We walk through and we have a presentation at the onset of the summit from National Weather Service. They provide us the hurricane brief season outlook. And then we walk through skills that we would like folks over a 2-day period, specific skills in communication, in information dissemination, putting RFAs up to a liaison in emergency management in the EOC, and then from the EOC down to community. And we're practicing all of these skill sets and procedures so that should there be a hurricane event that happens, we know how to operate as a coordinated network across the state. So that's an example of what we have been doing. This year's conference is open to the public, it's open to folks from across the state. What we're doing is a deep dive, so folks wouldn't get the broad 101 in everything. They choose a track, and we're hoping that hub teams would send 5 representatives, and each representative would enroll in a different track. And then through that deep dive that results in a certification, go back to their communities and further build out their teams.
Wow, and this is happening
On Hawai'i Island.
on what?
In June, it's going to be held June 12th and 13th at the University of Hawaii at Hilo.
And then I'm looking at Dr. Miku, because you're doing a summit on Oahu for what days?
I was gonna ask you about, we're looking at the 5th and 6th of June. It's the weekend before,
Okay,
actually, yeah.
so good, there can be actually like a lot of
Yeah, yeah.
cross-pollination.
And we're gonna go, yeah, this year.
Okay.
Vice versa.
Can I ask another
Yes.
question? You know, I started off talking about how government can help, and I'm a firm believer that government can't do everything. We need the public to be involved, and what you're doing is what we need. So going back to Haima, who thank you for being here. I'm assuming you're the appropriate state department that would be the tip of the spear. And what my thought would be is we need like a ombudsman or a like someone to collate all of this, coordinate it and organize it so that we're all working in coordination, yeah? Because the stronger these people are, the better our state is and the less you guys have to do, right? So my question is, can that be done? Is it being done?
Can we let John come to the table? And I wanna say, John's title is Community Outreach Coordinator Lead. So we do have the right person here, I believe.
Yeah, and I
And don't
don't
run
wanna,
away from him. You
I don't
guys
wanna
need to
put you on the spot, but you know.
Everybody
No,
go.
just kidding.
I'll stay with John.
Thank you,
I'll
Dr.
stay with
Miku.
you.
He showered.
No, so it's a great question, and thank you for that question, Representative, and thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. We all have been already working together. Just a little history real quick, I know time is sensitive here. In February of 2023, Administrator Barros took on Haima as the new administrator. In May of 2023, I was hired, the first position of community outreach. There was no dedicated community outreach position. Now, December of that year, we hired our community outreach coordinator, which is Kealiʻi in the back of the room there. Since then now, right, we've opened up and opened ourselves up to the communities and all of the organizations and all the leaders and said, hey, what's going on with resilience? What's the kind of map of connectivity across the state? And we did that. Fast forward to today now, we have 7 on our team in community outreach. We have 5 preparedness programs that we have not yet put out outside of the counties because we're still working this through with the county level administrators, because Haima's job is to support the counties. And this is why not yet in the hands of all of the great leaders here do we have this bundle, this package bundle of here's what we're doing. Now with that said though, in order to get to this point, I've had conversations with all of the panelists here today and a lot of the people in this room. So we are informed, we have been listening, and so what our job is now and what we've come to is we've designed a framework to then coordinate as the state, across the state. And this is where our primary program, the HAARP program, came from 2011 through Pacific Disaster Center and Haima. And it went through its phases in what was called HAARP at the time, same acronym, Hawaii Hazards Awareness and Resilience Program. But now we rebranded it starting in 2024 as HAARP, because what we've changed is our ability to execute, because now we have a team. Which means now, when we go out to the communities, when we discuss with the organizations and the leaders and those in the community, we're able to follow up and then coordinate further. So as we push forward, 2026 is our baseline year. Here's where we're saying, all right, we know all the pieces, all the communities, who's doing what. Now we're starting from here and we're creating some metrics moving forward. How do we measure in the next 5 years our growth in coordination with the communities?
I love hearing that. Before I forget, can I get all of your contact information? And if you guys have any GIA requests, please see me today so I can send memos to our GIA head person to advocate for you. And just following up, I heard you say you're working through the county, so do we need the counties to kind of step it up or
Well, I wouldn't say step it up. The counties are active. They have been working with us. We've been working with them. And really the beauty of the counties is the county emergency managers are the ones working directly with the communities, right? Haima doesn't get in front of the counties. So what we're saying is on Haima's end, we go from the federal level through the state, work our way through the county to the communities. And the communities now working opposite within their own communities, in their spaces, working through county level EM with then Haima and the other way around.
So the counties need somebody like you, right?
So they do,
They
there
have
are,
them.
yes, they
Okay.
do, and so we're strengthening that. And a lot of this has come from, again, the communities themselves saying, hey, here's what is needed, right?
So can I ask you to exercise your authority and hold these counties accountable and look for progress with these
That's our job.
nonprofits?
That's our job.
I think holistically, we'll get to that point, I don't think, but yes, this is what we're strengthening.
Yeah,
we're
we
building
need
together.
help in those areas for sure.
Absolutely.
I think this is a hidden disaster that's, you know, possibly ready to happen. And you know, I mean, I'm a kapuna, and when I look at this, I'm like, oh, I rather just read the paper, you know. I mean, so the preparedness is something like we're just it's not gonna happen, or one of these days, you know. So
Absolutely.
we you know, I applaud Dotty and Hector and Janice and you know, all of you. Thank you so much.
So we got 5 more minutes. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make some closing comments, but I'm gonna work backwards this time and allow Dr. Miku to say something in closing, and then Janice, since you started off, you're gonna get the final word before I adjourn. What I guess I wanna share is that to the AARP presentation, when you mentioned that Hurricane Katrina is 21 years ago, when they were having the celebrations this past summer, my daughters watched that and were telling me, Mom, what happened in Katrina? And they were watching all of those videos and seeing how the communities were, and it was jarring to me because I had lived through that, but my daughters are 20 and 15, so they wouldn't have. So that was their seeing and understanding, and we had just gone through the fires, and so it's in the minds of even young people. How are we going to help our community survive? So I applaud the young people who are here and that you guys are activating them, but that's super important. I want to just mention a couple of words that I kept hearing throughout the presentations. I heard community, proactive, being trained, impact, having impact, being flexible, trusted. Another word I kept hearing was learning networks, learning communities. And then I think other really important words to me were everyday people working through problems, but then pivoting when there needs to be a coordinated response. And I heard, and I want to end with these two terms I kept hearing: communities of practice. Because readiness is not just a one-day thing, it's 10 years of practice, so that when that disaster hits, we are ready and we can mobilize. And we all need to do that. So I really want to echo and just say and applaud what you folks are doing. From my perch here, we have bills that we're looking at for funding, bills that may not move, but the conversations have started. We have a bill, House Bill 2457. We were looking just for some seed funding for pilot programs to help nurture what's happening. Haima has come in with House Bill 1060 last year when they were talking about community readiness centers. We've had community members step forward and call for Hurricane 5 shelters. And in this time of incredible change in government right now, FEMA is looking at how they're going to restructure. So that's another conversation level that we haven't even talked about, and how they're going to restructure emergency funding. So while all these things are happening at the federal level, at the state level, communities are still working, and we recognize that. And so we will keep having the conversations. Whatever happens with these bills, it's important that the conversation has started and that we will look for funding in different ways and different mechanisms, whether any of these bills survive or not. And there's all kinds of ways we do that: through grants and aid funding, through line item funding for the departments, and then through the community network and the philanthropy communities that I know have also stepped up and been a part of this community. We will keep doing that. That's my commitment from this committee. And let's just keep moving forward. I want to turn it over to Dr. Miku, and then Janice, you're going to have the last word. Dr. Miku.
I just
So
want,
Greg Palati's commitment even after she leaves the legislature.
Yes, oh, absolutely. This is stuff.
in the Key Now Hub, right?
Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you again for the opportunity to present and share, and also for bringing all of us together. This has really been really important, and even though we do all work together, having an outside energy to do this is so critical. So I guess closing things, I'm an environmental science professor at KCC. And one of the things I guess I just want to lift up that I think we sometimes don't talk about is the link between sustainability, right, resilience, and emergency preparedness. And that just this idea of I say this to my students, the world is getting harder and it's more complex, more challenging. We're going to continue to face that. And so it's really important that we support our communities to prepare ourselves so that we can remember to do this, but also invest in the next generation to do that, because they'll need to have the skill sets. So when we can do programs for keiki, learning these skill sets, right? So how do children respond when they get an emergency alert on their phone? So that every student in my sustainability class that learns about sea level rise and climate impacts also has their go kit, that they all have it, and I know they all have the alerts on their phones, right? So I think that's the biggest thing for me, is just remembering that larger picture link. We continue to build the skill sets in our community, our family, our homes, and our next generation to prepare. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Miku. Janice.
Mahalo for the opportunity, and I think one of the most powerful tools that legislators hold is the power of words, and words matter. And I would just really ask on behalf of communities that have been doing this work for many, many years, that their work is recognized and reflected in the policy that you're drafting, and that you would consider replacing things like to create or to pilot. You know, it is received like what has been happening hasn't been noticed or recognized or valued. And we want to put energy into the work that folks have been doing for so many years as volunteers, and to recognize that through language in your written legislation, I think would be so affirming and would give so much energy, whether there's funding that's tied to it or not, just to see it written down, that we see what you've been doing and we value what you've been doing, would really go a long way in continuing to energize the movement. So that would be my request. Mahalo.
Thank you, Janice. And that's a beautiful request, and that's something that we can do. We definitely can reframe and change our language. So thank you all. To the community, we will have all of these slides available, and we will make sure that all of these conferences get publicized through our various networks. I know that my colleagues are going to be very excited about the opportunities for their communities to learn, so we will be sharing this with you all. So thank you very much. It is now 11:32, and we are adjourned. Mahalo.